Well, welcome everyone. It's good to see you back here this week. And before we jump into our theme for today, let's reflect on what we did last week, where we talked about connection and disconnection sort of in general. And if you remember, the practice assignment I encouraged you to do was notice and be curious. About what? Notice and be curious about where you see connection or disconnection. So take a moment to reflect just over the last few days. And even if it just happened in the last few hours, connection or disconnection, just pause and think about, what did you notice? And even if you say, I didn't notice anything, what might we say that's about? There's still some connection and disconnection going on in that scenario as well. And what, if anything, did you feel curious about relative to connection and disconnection? So Greg, I want to ask you this question. What did you notice this past week, or what are you curious about with connection and disconnection?
Yeah, this week I had a very interesting conversation with a friend, and he'd had a huge experience of disconnection, and it was online, the way that happens online sometimes, and it was very, very upsetting, and he felt very shut out of a conversation. And but the interesting thing, and I remember, I've had an experience like that too. So we talked about that. But as we talked and we shared our experience of that, we connected. And, we had something to share, and we had something, the common experience, we felt like we understood each other. And so that was a really helpful experience for both of us, of feeling like we got reconnected.
So what a beautiful example of disconnection creating connection elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't get the connection on one side, but we got it on the other side. And I don't know, there's something I felt really good about it. And he texted me and said he felt really good about it. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that story. Well, one of the things I noticed over the week is that the first hint that I get of observing connection or being in connection comes through, surprise, my heart. It's like before my mind even registers, hey, I think I'm connecting with this person, or I don't feel like I'm connecting with this person. It's like I first get that feeling, right in the heart chest area. So that was really interesting to me to think about how quickly that happens. Just like bing, it's
Just
there.
like that.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. So it helped me remember that I can really tune into that when I'm out and about. So, and that's actually a good lead in to what we're going to talk about today, which is connecting with self. Because in a sense, that's what I'm talking about, is noticing what's happening in my heart is one way that I connected with myself in observance of connection or disconnection. So connection with self, we're going to talk today about why is it important? Why is it hard? And what can we do to get better at it? Now, before I go any farther, you might already be thinking, oh, I've heard this message 1,000 times, right? Self-care, self-compassion, all those things. And sometimes we sort of tune it out. But let's think back about our technology metaphor that we've been using in this course. What happens to your device when you forget to charge it? And let's say not only did you not charge it, there's no plug around anytime or anywhere close by, and there's a call you need to make. So we know what happens with our technology when we forget to charge our battery. So that's kind of the idea we're going to think about today with connection with self, is how do we connect to ourself similar to how we charge our battery in our devices? Connecting to ourself is like charging our internal battery. And again, I know that you've heard these messages before, whether it's the one about if you're on an airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help somebody else. Or we've all heard, you've got to love yourself before you could love someone else. So we've heard messages like that. And I think that's part of why we kind of let it go. We say, well, we all know this. It's common sense. But the real challenge is, how do we make common sense common practice? We know it's important to connect with self, but do we take time to do it regularly? And do we build our skill at having multiple ways that we connect with self, so that if one source isn't available, we know that other sources are available? Now, there's so much we could say about this. And again, I know on one hand it can sound cliche, but think about it. This relationship to ourself is perhaps the most fundamental, most vital, most precious relationship that we have to cultivate. Because it's this relationship, this connection with self, that goes out into the world and experiences everything else and everyone else. And there's so many quotes that I think of about this topic, but one that I love comes from the yoga master BKS Iyengar. Before we find peace among nations, we have to find peace inside that small nation, which is our own being. So I'm sure you can relate to that, especially in some of the political unrest that we've had recently, that we certainly want to create peace between nations, between people, between groups. And we first have to ask ourselves, what is the level of peace within my own inner system? So that's what we're talking about today. And everything that we experience inside ourselves not only influences, but maybe even controls everything that we experience. So what we think and feel influences what we say and do. And as such, what we think and feel shapes our experience of everyone else and everything else. So that's why we start there. So think about it for a moment. What's your experience of others or the world around you when you feel resourceful? When you feel like your battery is charged? What's your experience as you go out and interact with others, interact with the world? And conversely, what happens? What is your experience of others and the world when you are depleted, discouraged, disappointed, tired? So we know that changes how we see the world. And another quote that it made me think of was the Anais Nin quote, "We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are." So our view of others and the world is so much affected by what is going on inside ourselves and our ability to connect with ourselves. So think about a time that you handled a challenging situation really well. Can you remember what it felt like inside you? When you felt like no matter what was going on, you somehow knew how to be with that. You trusted what you needed to say or what you needed to do. And if you can recall a situation like that, how would you describe your connection to yourself in that situation? Maybe some words come to you, or maybe it's just a feeling, like I said about the feeling in my heart when I observed connection. How do you know in that situation that you're connected to self? And again, let's think about that other side of experience when we've been in a challenging situation and we felt like anything we did or said was wrong. What was going on inside you then? How would you describe your connection to self in that experience? So hopefully you can think of at least a couple of contrasting examples to make this real for you. And I'd like to share a couple of examples for me that shows both sides of the equation, so to speak. And I'm going to use an example of something that we all do all the time. Standing in line, waiting for something. Okay. So situation one happened a few years ago after I had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder and actually was prescribed medication, steroids, if you've ever taken those, steroids, to reduce the inflammation that was going on in my body. And I needed to go to the grocery store. So I went out to the grocery store, even though I was not feeling well. I was standing in line. There were two people in front of me and everything seemed to be going normal. But I could feel inside myself that I was getting impatient, that I was getting irritated. I could feel jittery in my body. I could feel my mind start to race. And I actually started having fantasies in the line about just yelling out, telling people to hurry up. Now, I didn't do that, thank goodness, but I can still remember that experience. It actually starts to activate emotion in my body right now as I think about that, because I felt so not myself. And I wasn't myself. I wasn't connected to myself, certainly. Now let's contrast that to a few years ago when I was standing in line at LAX, Los Angeles Airport, coming out of a 10-day meditation retreat. And I had gotten to the airport a little bit late and I was realizing that I didn't have a lot of time. So I hoped that the security check-in line wasn't too long. However, it was really long. So I'm standing in line and I am having thoughts like, I may miss my flight. But I didn't get pulled into the story of missing the flight. Instead, I stood in the line and I looked at people and I just paused and thought, I wonder where these people are going. I wonder what the story is of their life, whether they're taking a trip to do something fun, visit people they love, or whether they're responding to something that maybe is an unwanted experience in their life. And I just felt fascinated by thinking about the human beings that were standing in that line. Now, if the thought came back to me to say, you might miss your flight, I responded to myself quickly by saying, I'll get home eventually. And the good news is I didn't miss my flight. But you can tell from those two stories, and I understand the conditions are very, very different, and it's on purpose that we wanted to contrast those to say, how do I know? How do I know? How can I tell if I'm connecting with self or not? So that's what we want to really dig into today and think about how this happens, this communication, if you will, with self. So with that, I'm actually going to share a slide. Okay. Hopefully you can see my slide. We're talking about connecting with self here. So again, sticking with our technology metaphor, you probably have something that looks like this in your house, somewhere around your computer. In our house, oops, hold on. It's called a gateway device. And what that means is it's a combined router and modem. Now, I'm not a tech person, but if you are, you know what those things mean. But basically, it's a combined device that takes information in from the outside, takes information from the internet, and brings it into our home and then routes it to our various devices, our computers, our phones, iPads, whatever. And the reality is, and you see this on your device, these lights are always blinking. So there's always information coming in and going out, coming in, going out. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to manage, which always makes me think when our internet is not working, it's kind of like, well, what did we expect? There's a lot going on here and we're just one house, right? Well, it's interesting to think about the fact we also have what we're going to call our natural communication system. Whoops. Our natural communication system. And it's maybe not exactly a device, but there are some inputs that we rely on for our natural communication system. Our body and all the signals that come in through our body, our heart, the emotional flavors of experience that we have every day, and of course, our thinking mind. So you can think about these three things as channels, if you will, that like the gateway device for technology, we're getting information in routinely, quickly. It's blinking, body, heart, mind, and we're trying to manage that and figure out what all that means. So this is how we're communicating with ourselves, and all of our other conversations that we have with others in the world are also coming through this natural gateway of our natural communication system. So there's a lot to manage here. And this is part of why mindfulness practice can be very, very helpful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg to help us with that, help us understand mindfulness and meeting our natural communication system. Greg?
Yes, thank you, Chris. It's such a helpful image, right? The flashing lights. And what I want to do for us today is to actually practice this. Let's practice connecting in and feeling the information coming in. So just sit upright in a comfortable way. If you're kind of slouched somewhere, you can find a place to sit upright where it just wakes us up to be straight up and down. And let's begin by tuning in. Mindfulness just means tuning in. So let's tune in first to our body. So feel your body. Feel your sense of touch. So you have your skin, it's all over your body. And some of it is contacting the air. And there's a feeling, there's a little tickle of contacting the air. Your face and your hands. And then there's your clothing that rests on the skin. There's a little bit of pressure and temperature difference. Feel that directly. And then we can think of going inside with touch. There's the feeling of the inside of your body, inside of your chest and your stomach. You can't feel everything in there, but you can just feel that there's your lungs moving, expanding and contracting, feeling of your stomach or maybe your heart beating, the feeling inside your face and your head, inside your arms and your legs. And in the same way, let's connect in with sound. Let's hear. So you're listening to my voice, but also tune into the room you're in, whatever space you're in. Background noise. I can just barely hear some birds and a bus driving by. What can you hear? And then our eyes. We normally use our eyes in this very purposeful way, but here we're going to relax and just let vision come in through your eyes. Colors, shapes, lines, textures. Just relax your eyes. And there might be some smell or some taste. Just check in about that. And then let's feel our emotions. And here we're not trying to label our emotions. We're taking a mindful approach to our emotions, which means we're listening to them in real time. What is happening in the present moment with our emotions? We don't have to figure them out right now. We can do that later. Just feel them. Maybe they're very quiet today, or maybe they're very strong. And maybe it's changing. And then in the same way with our mind, our thinking mind, let's just look into our thinking mind for a moment and see what's happening right now. What is happening? What is coming through the thinking mind? Is it busy? Is it still? Are there specific themes in the thoughts? It's almost like looking up into the sky and watching the birds fly. So let's bring all of that together. Just feel the body and touch and hearing, seeing, smell, taste. Include your heart, the feeling of the emotions, and those birds flying in the sky of the mind. And that's it. That's your natural communication system. And that's what mindfulness is just tuning in and connecting with ourselves. That's what it means. So, Chris, do you want to say anything about your experience of that?
Yeah, it was, I'm really glad that we did that. What I noticed was a lot of energy in my hands and in my feet. And my interpretation of that this morning was that obviously we're here on the call and that I'm kind of revved up a little bit, that I feel like this action orientation in my hands and in my feet. I'm not feeling as much in the center of my body, or I wasn't when we started the meditation, but thanks to your wonderful guidance, I felt like I was able to just be okay with that fluttery energy and start letting myself come in more towards my heart, towards what I was feeling, towards my gratitude for being here with everyone and talking about this topic that's so precious to me.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And I want to ask you at home, what was your experience today? Just take a moment and remember. You're making a mental note to yourself. What did you notice today? What was interesting that came up? It's maybe something unexpected. Or maybe something that happens all the time, but you really noticed it today in a different way. And just like we've looked into our own connection we have with ourselves, we're going to highlight this a little further by doing a role play. And today we're going to do role plays by ourselves because we're talking about connecting with ourselves. So Chris is going to begin by giving us a little role play around technology, and then I'll do one following that has less to do with technology. So Chris, I'll go ahead and put you up here.
All right. So let me just set the scene here. The scene is something that happens a lot lately is I have a planning meeting with Greg that we really need to make sure we do today because we've got this class that we're putting on. Okay, so planning meeting with Greg. And oh, by the way, I'm already running a little late for it. All right. So here I sit at my computer. Oh my gosh, I can't even find that link that Greg sent me. I know he sent it in an email. Wait a minute, maybe I put it in a meeting invitation. Let me click there and see if it's there. It's not there. Let me try one more thing. Okay. Okay, good. There's the meeting link. What? The Zoom connection isn't working. It's probably because I updated my computer last night. Every time I update my computer, this happens, and then I can't get through. Oh, or maybe Zoom is having an outage with all the busyness that they have lately. It's like, oh, why can't I get this to work? Why can't I get this to work? I hate this. I hate this. Let me look down here. Wait a minute. Airplane mode? How did my system get set to airplane mode? Maybe inadvertently I wasn't paying attention and I clicked on something I shouldn't have. And it turned off my Wi-Fi and put me into airplane mode. Ugh, I hate when I do this. I hate when I do this kind of thing. So pause for a moment and think about when you've been in that kind of an experience. Something's not working and it's so easy to quickly judge other people, other things. And then we realize because we've been a little bit unconnected, disconnected from ourselves, that it was really our own action that created the little mishap. So that's the technology role play. Hopefully y'all can relate to that. And let's see what Greg comes up with for the human role play.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I could relate to that on a daily basis. Okay, so different setting for my role play here. I'm trying to catch a train. I'm in a train station. And so I'm coming in, I've got a lot of luggage. I just came down the escalator. Everything's really busy. People are everywhere. And I'm checking, and I've got 10 minutes. I've got 10 minutes until the train. I came in late, and I just said, like, I'm realizing suddenly, like, I don't have any food. This is like a 4-hour train ride. I don't even have anything to eat or drink. And there's a food stand, but the line is really long. And oh God, I'm getting a text. Okay, so I have to check this, and that's a friend of mine. He's making a joke about something that's not really important, although it's funny. That's what maybe I should say. Ha ha. Okay, all right. What do we? Oh my God. So okay, I still. And I need to use the bathroom, and it's way up on the first floor, and with all this luggage, I can't do it. I'm just let's see. I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do? And like, if I go up there to use the bathroom, then I'm going to miss the train, and I cannot figure out what direction to go in right now. So just feel that situation. Or whatever situation like that you can think of. What is it like when your attention is going in all directions and you get more and more like you're feeling scrambled and disorganized inside yourself? So we've talked about why it's important to connect with yourself. Chris was very articulate about that, and why it's hard to connect with ourselves, why we tend to forget to connect with ourselves. But then the question is, I'm sure you're wondering, so what do we do about all of this? And Chris is going to give us some guidance there. Chris, please.
All righty. Well, I'm going to share my screen one more time. Hold on, get my slideshow going here. So we want to talk about something that we call in our practice the personal green zone. Personal green zone. And before I get into detail, what I want to say about this is we certainly didn't invent this concept. This is the name we gave it, the label we gave it, but many, many people have been talking and do talk about this concept of what we're going to describe as a personal green zone. So what is a personal green zone? I like to think about it as a place where, hold on, I'm going to use my pen here. Greg inspired me the other day to draw, so I'm going to try drawing. So I like to think about a personal green zone for myself as a place where my perspective is expanded beyond myself. And the boundaries are kind of soft and fluid. So that when I'm in a personal green zone, when I tap into personal green zone, I feel less of a sharp boundary between me and the world, between me and others. And it does feel like more of a unifying experience. Like we're all here. We're all doing the best we can. So it's a way that I start reminding myself that I'm doing the best I can, but also remember that everybody else here is also doing the best they can. So what might we do to find or create a personal green zone? Well, one example, a very common example, is nature. And if you think about it, this is a beautiful image for a personal green zone because it's so green and beautiful. This happens to be a photo from the Japanese garden in Portland, Oregon, where I live. And just imagine yourself walking up those steps into this beautiful, lush, tree-filled, big tree, may I add, big trees, tree-filled and moss-covered, soft ground. And I know you've been in places like this. How do you feel when you're here? I know for me, I slow down. I feel calmer. Certainly feel more connected to myself and everything else. And again, it just feels like a sense of it's going to be okay. Whatever I'm dealing with, it's going to be okay. So that's a more general, a place that we can go for a green zone. There's lots and lots and lots of examples of green zone we'll talk about more in a second. But the other one that I wanted to share today by way of a personal story is this little guy. This little chickadee, I should give him a name. This little chickadee comes to visit me. This is an actual picture from my office window. And this guy comes to visit frequently. Now, that in and of itself is a cool experience and a fun experience, but why would I call this viewing of the little chickadee a green zone? Here's why. When I was in the first grade, my teacher, Mrs. Savage, loved me. She absolutely loved me, and I knew it. And yes, maybe to some extent I was the teacher's pet, but I just felt so safe and so valued in her presence. Well, one of our projects as a class was to do reports on birds. And guess which kind of bird Mrs. Savage assigned for me to be? Yep, a chickadee. So I got to do a book report. Now, you know, first grader book report, you can imagine what that was like. And I also got a song that I could sing that mimicked the chickadee's bird song. And of course, she praised me and the other kids loved it. And ever since then, when I see this chickadee, actually any chickadee, I immediately go back to that feeling in my body of being safe and loved and valued, connected, and all those things. So whether or not your personal green zone is a place you go, whether it's something that you hear or see that allows you to tap into that natural connection, self-connection, you can be as creative as you want to be. And I think the more options we have, the better we are, so that we know at any moment we can tap into this level of connection. So let's talk about some other examples for green zone connection. So finding or creating your own green zone. So Greg, let's start with you. How
Sure.
would you describe at least one, I know you have many, at least one of your personal green zones?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I have one. It's kind of I don't know, maybe it's kind of geeky, but I have gotten into this thing of watching documentaries on YouTube
Wow. All
about
right.
specifically about history. And I really get into them. Like even there's just times when I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed or exhausted or whatever. And watching these documentaries about obscure subjects in ancient history, might seem ridiculous or irrelevant or something, but actually for me, it really gives me a sense that um, I don't know, there's goodness in the just like humans surviving over time in a million different ways and in tons of different cultures and getting through all these hard things, and then we go on, and I don't know, there's just something that makes me feel less serious about my own dramas that are going on.
Yeah. So for the purpose of our whiteboard exercise, are you okay if we just say movies?
Um, can you say documentaries?
All right. We'll say
Yeah.
document if I can spell documentaries.
Yeah.
Documentaries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
And I love what you said, Greg, is that when you watch these particular documentaries that your perspective enlarges, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then that's it. I take myself a little bit less seriously and relax.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about you, Chris? What do you
Well,
do?
I already talked about the chickadee story, right?
Right.
Or the Japanese garden, but the other one, I'm sure people will be so surprised at this one, is meditation.
What would you say in terms of why is meditation a green zone for you?
What I've learned over the decades that I've done it, that I've practiced meditation, is in addition to the obvious of I calm down, I relax, I slow down, all those things, there's something that reminds me that I don't need to be in control of everything,
Mm.
that life unfolds, life keeps happening. And when I can start letting go of some of that belief that I should control things, then I can relax a little bit more into to the natural unfolding of life and be more interested in how I relate to the natural unfolding of life. Not so
Yeah.
much on I need to change it, but how do I want to meet this moment? One of my favorite questions is, who do I become in this moment?
Mm.
So,
I can relate to that. I
yeah,
think, yeah, and it's funny because I don't always want to meditate. I can feel resistance to meditating, but I really, especially over time, maybe less at the start, but more over time, I really feel the difference afterwards in what
yeah,
you're talking about, like that sense of being able to flow with experience, like your LAX
yeah.
example, say, okay, well, this is not the easiest situation, but I can actually stay connected with myself and work with it.
Yeah. And Greg, let's get a few other ideas out here. You've worked with lots of people to help them develop a personal green zone. What's a couple of other things we can put on this list?
Well, I mean, I think of a friend for whom dance is a
Mm,
huge personal green zone. It's a way to um, really reconnect with herself in a huge way. And it's a
yeah,
tremendous source of joy and a sense of human connection. And there's something about touch and movement and everything. Actually, I
yeah.
can think of several people in my life for whom this is a huge green zone.
That's fantastic. And then that makes me think immediately about this kind of related
Yeah,
to dance,
yeah, absolutely.
music, whether it's singing or listening to music or playing music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of another friend for whom, spending time with animals is a big one.
Mm,
And there's something there about the you know, the quiet presence, I think, of animals
Mm,
that that helps her remember her own quiet presence,
mm.
really tune into more subtleties. You know, the way animals are sort of more tuned, they may not be tuned into all the overt things that humans are, but they're tuned into other subtle things that we sometimes forget.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One that jumps out to me too now is reading. And that's, that's so broad, but when we think about all the different materials, books, poetry, plays,
Yeah.
things that people could read for inspiration,
Yeah.
for contemplation. I know lots of people that do a lot of reading and feel that is their self-connection.
Yeah. I think back years ago, I had one book of poetry that I took around with me in my bag, and it was a collection of Rilke poems, and I really like him, um, Rilke, and I would often read the same ones, you know, like, and if I just sat down and I just had a few minutes, I would read the same one. I'd already read it, like, I don't know how many times, but I would read it over
Yeah.
again, and I would feel so much more connected with myself by the end of it. And I would get, you know, layers of meaning, more depth. You know, Rilke's poetry really um, did that for me during that particular time in my life. And, you know, it was a huge source of reconnection that way.
Yeah. Well, similarly, and especially thinking about your life, what I know about you is writing
Yeah.
has been a really important thing for you as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah. Especially, you know, I did a lot of writing about my life, nonfiction
Mm-hmm.
writing. And that's part of my background. I went to graduate school for that. But it, you know, it wasn't just school, it wasn't just for a career or something. It was really self exploration and going through my own experience in a very careful, thorough way, not even thorough, but like, you know, an artistic way.
Yeah.
Art can be such a green zone, but it's just, you know,
Oh,
really looking at my experience at a subtle level allowed me to change like really change patterns in myself that I couldn't have got to otherwise. And it took time and it took effort, but it was so rewarding that it was fine. Actually, it was great. It wasn't like
yeah.
doing hard work, you know. It was joyful.
Yeah. And I put art up just even though we've got things on here that would be considered art, so many things that could fit under that whole category of art and artistic expression. So, yeah. Anything else? Maybe we have time for one more, Greg. Any others that you think we haven't hit on that you think are really rich in addition to we've already talked about nature and some of these other things?
Well, I think, you know, the last one I can think of is athletics.
Mm,
And this has to do, like, in my own life, I was a really passionate rock climber for a very long time. And I still am when I get a chance. But you know, movement and using your body, um, you know, for me, that was, especially like when I was young, it was such a way out of, you know, kind of being a depressed teenager and not being able to feel connected in. And then I would go out, and of course, this has to do with nature. Actually, put nature on there too, Chris, if you
yeah.
can fit it in anywhere. But just being out in the big world and using my body was such an incredible way to remember who I was.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is a great list. It makes me want to go out and do all these things.
True.
So those of you watching, these are some ideas that Greg and I relate to, but let's pause for a moment. And if you've got a pencil and paper handy, I would encourage you to maybe write down your top three personal green zones, how you connect with yourself, how you connect with yourself. Where do you go to recharge your batteries? All right. So let's have that. Keep that handy. We'll come back to that in a moment. But Greg, I think we are ready for another one of your fabulous role plays.
Okay. So here I am. We're going to do the train station again, but we're going to come at it from a mindful perspective. So here I am, I've rushed down the same escalator with all of my luggage and, 10 minutes until the train goes, and I still don't have food and I still need to use the bathroom and dropping in with myself. I say to myself, okay, I have 10 minutes. There's a big line for the food. The bathroom's upstairs. Here's a question. Do I need to take this train? I'm fixated on the idea I have to catch this train. Is that actually true? When I'm mindful, I could actually ask myself that. I'm not so distracted. So I say, okay, yeah, you know what? I could take a later train, but it would create complications because my friend is going to come pick me up and they're not easy to reach. So in a way, it is good if I take this train. And I don't have food and it's a 4-hour train ride. So, and I need to use the bathroom. There's bathrooms on the train. I say, well, I'm worried about my luggage. I have too much luggage. I can't bring it into the bathroom. Well, how about I find someone? I'll look for a trustworthy person and say, hey, could you just watch this for a minute while I use the bathroom? It's not a big deal. And I still don't have food. And, so I'm going to be hungry. Okay, so I'm going to be hungry. Is it actually that big of a drama? Am I going to pass out? I don't think I'm going to pass out. And actually, I've had situations like this in my life where I didn't have any food for 4 hours and I didn't die or anything. Nothing particularly major happened. I just had to go along with it. Like I think of times with traveling, like particularly if I've been in the developing world traveling and, it's like going without food for 4 hours is not a big drama for a lot of people on this earth. Is that just more of an idea I have rather than a real serious situation? And can I just be with myself and be hungry for a few hours on a very nice train with nice bathrooms? Okay, yeah. Just get on the train. Very simple. So feel yourself. What would it be like to be able to at least have a little space by connecting with yourself, connecting with your body, your heart, and your mind, to have a little more space around all these dramas? What would that be like? And in light of that, Chris is going to share with us our assignment for this week.
Yes, sirree. We have another assignment for you. So again, we're going to start this with notice and be curious about where you naturally experience self-connection. So you don't even have to do anything different than you would normally do, but just notice in your day-to-day life where you tap in. Is it while listening to music? Is it while tending to your plants? Is it connecting with someone that you love? Is it reading, writing, some of the things we talked about? So just really hone your observation skills to notice. Where do I naturally connect? What brings me home to myself? And in those times, notice how your natural communication system is communicating with you. Think about Greg's mindfulness exercise from today. What's the body experiencing? What's the heart experiencing? What's the mind experiencing? So that as you take in all that information, back to our beautiful way of thinking that it's that communication within myself, that will increase the likelihood that there is better communication and connection with everyone and the world around me. So that's my encouragement for you for this week. Notice where natural self-connection happens and notice how your natural communication system is working in that moment. So one other thing as you go out and work with your own personal green zones, and as you do this self-observation, and we probably all know this if we're honest, that sometimes we can get fooled to think that certain behaviors or activities are a way that we connect. But really, if we're honest, we know that ultimately they cause us to disconnect or distract or numb out. So this is why this week we want you to be particularly sensitive to really paying attention and make sure that when you're touching into that personal green zone, that it is something that really helps you come alive and open to your experience. So with that, remember that over the week, you can participate in the course online forum, which is accessible from the course homepage. And you can post anything there. You can post reports of your own experience, quotes that you like that are relative to the topic, articles, YouTube videos, anything that, again, is consistent with the themes that we're talking about. So with that, Greg and I will sign off and remind you to look for connection wherever you see it. And we'll connect with you again next week.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.